Welcome to Moonlit Romance Library. Please follow for more stories. The day Aveline Ashwood's husband came home with a younger Luna, the entire North Hall smelled of roasted venison and betrayal. She knew something was wrong the moment the iron gates groaned open at noon, because Garrick Blackmere never returned early from border campaigns. Garrick liked his wars the way he liked his ale, long, loud, and preferably involving someone else's suffering. For him to cut a 3-month campaign down to 6 weeks meant one of two things. Either the Eastern Wolf clans had surrendered spectacularly, or Garrick had found something more interesting than fighting. Aveline stood at the top of the stone staircase in Ashenmoor Keep, her hands dusted with flour because she had been in the kitchens again. She was always in the kitchens, not because anyone expected the Luna of Blackmere pack to bake bread, but because Aveline had discovered years ago that the kitchen staff were the only people in this entire frozen fortress who did not look at her with pity. My lady. Berta, the head cook, appeared at her elbow, breathless. Berta was 63 years old, built like a wardrobe, and possessed the singular talent of being able to communicate catastrophic news through the angle of her eyebrows alone. Right now, both eyebrows were practically touching her hairline. He's brought someone. He always brings someone. Last time it was 47 prisoners of war and a stolen catapult. It's not a catapult. Is it bigger than a catapult? Berta's mouth pressed into a line so thin it nearly disappeared. It's younger than a catapult. Aveline set down the bread dough. She wiped her hands on her apron slowly, methodically, the way she did everything, not because she was calm, but because she had learned that if she moved slowly enough, people assumed she was in control. She walked to the narrow window that overlooked the main courtyard, and she looked down. Garrick Blackmere rode through the gates on his black warhorse, his dark hair wind-tangled, his jaw sharp enough to cut accusations, his silver-gray eyes catching the winter light in that way that had once made her heart stutter. He was, as always, devastatingly handsome. 6 feet and 4 inches of alpha wolf wrapped in black leather and the unshakable conviction that the world owed him something. Beside him, on a white mare with ribbons braided into its mane, rode a girl. She was perhaps 23, golden-haired, pink-cheeked, wrapped in white furs that looked brand new. She rode with the particular posture of someone who had been told she was precious approximately 400 times that morning. And on her left wrist, Aveline's wolf eyes could see it clearly from this distance, was a Luna binding mark, fresh, still faintly glowing with the amber light of a completed ceremony. "Ah," Aveline said. "My lady. That is a very nice horse she's riding." "My lady, he's bound her. The mark is—" "I can see the mark, Berta." Below, the household guard was assembling. The servants were gathering. Garrick dismounted with the easy grace of a man who expected applause for existing, and then he turned and lifted the golden-haired girl down from her horse with both hands on her waist, and she giggled. She giggled. Aveline had not giggled in approximately 4 years. She was 31 years old, and she had been Garrick's Luna since she was 22. And she had run this household through 2 border wars, a grain famine, a collapsed mine shaft, 3 outbreaks of river fever, and the time the East Tower caught fire because Garrick's beta had tried to roast a whole elk indoors. She had earned every single gray hair that she did not yet have but fully expected by next winter. And now there was a girl in her courtyard wearing her title. "Well," Aveline said, untying her apron and folding it neatly, "I suppose I should go down and introduce myself. It would be rude not to." "My lady, you don't have to." "Berta, if I don't go down there right now, I will have to go down there later, and later I will have had time to think about it, and if I think about it, I will be forced to acknowledge that my husband of 9 years has ridden home with a replacement wife like she's a new pair of boots, and I will feel something about that, and I don't feel like feeling something right now, so I'm going down." She went down. The great stone staircase of Ashenmoor Keep had 114 steps. Aveline had counted them during her first week as a new bride, giddy and in love and absolutely certain that Garrick Blackmere was the greatest man alive. She counted them again now. 114 steps between who she had been 5 minutes ago and who she was about to become. The courtyard was full by the time she reached the bottom. Garrick's warriors had dismounted. The household staff had formed their usual receiving line. And there, standing at the center of it all like a painting of a saint who had wandered into the wrong chapel, was the golden-haired girl, clinging to Garrick's arm. Garrick saw Aveline. She watched it happen, the flicker of something in his silver eyes. Not guilt, exactly. Garrick Blackmere did not do guilt. It was more like the brief inconvenience of remembering that you had left a candle burning in a room you no longer intended to use. Aveline. Garrick. This is Lenora. She is the daughter of Lord Voss of Goldenmere. How nice. What is she doing here? Lenora smiled. It was a sweet smile, practiced and perfect, the kind of smile that had probably been rehearsed in a mirror decorated with dried wildflowers. I'm so honored to finally meet you, Lady Ashwood. Garrick has told me so much about. What is she doing here, Garrick? The courtyard went quiet. Even the horses stopped shifting. Garrick straightened. He was taller than Aveline by nearly a foot, and he used that height now the way he always did. Not as a weapon exactly, but as a fact. A reminder that the world was built for men of his size, and everyone else was just borrowing space. Lenora is my mate, he said, my true mate. The bond awakened during the Eastern campaign. I have already completed the Luna binding. There it was. Spoken in front of 50 people, the household guard, the kitchen staff, 2 stable boys, and a pigeon that had been sitting on the gate and was now regarding the whole scene with visible judgment. Your true mate, Aveline repeated. The pull was undeniable. I resisted for weeks, but... Weeks? You resisted for weeks. I know this is difficult. You resisted for weeks. She let the words sit there. We were married for 9 years, Garrick. 9 years. And you resisted this girl for weeks. I'm genuinely impressed by your restraint. Lenora's smile wavered. She looked up at Garrick with wide, uncertain eyes. You said she would understand. She will understand, Garrick said, and his jaw tightened in that way that meant he had already decided how this conversation was going to end and was merely waiting for reality to catch up. Aveline looked at him, really looked at him, at the face she had kissed 10,000 times, at the hands she had held through nightmares, at the man she had believed was her home. She did not cry. She had cried exactly once in her marriage, the night their first and only pregnancy had ended at 3 months, and she had bled alone in their bed because Garrick had been at a council meeting and no one had wanted to interrupt him. She had decided after that night that crying was a currency she could not afford to spend on people who would not value it. You're right, she said. I understand perfectly. Then she turned to Lenora and she smiled. It was not a kind smile. It was the smile of a woman who had balanced 9 years of household accounts, negotiated grain prices with merchants who thought female Lunas were decorative, and once physically carried a wounded border scout 6 miles through snow because the patrol wagon had broken an axle. Lady Lenora, welcome to Ashenmore Keep. I'll have the servants prepare a room for you. The East Tower is lovely this time of year. The roof leaks only when it rains, but it almost never rains here, so you should be fine. She looked back at Garrick. Except it's winter, and winter means snow, and snow melts. So I suppose the roof will leak constantly, but I'm sure your true mate is very resilient. Then she walked back inside. She made it all the way to the kitchen before her hands started shaking. Berta was waiting. Berta was always waiting. The old cook took one look at Aveline's face and said nothing, because Berta was the kind of woman who understood that sometimes the most compassionate thing you could do for someone was to simply witness their composure without testing it. I need to leave, Aveline said. Yes, my lady. Tonight? Yes, my lady. He'll try to keep me here, for appearances. The pack expects a proper transition of Luna status, and Garrick won't want the Northern Territories to think he discarded his Luna without cause. He'll want me to stay and smile and hand Lenora the household keys in some ridiculous ceremony so it all looks civilized. Then we don't give him the chance. No, we don't. Aveline's mind was already working. She had always been like this. She felt things deeply, but processed them practically. Heartbreak could wait. Logistics could not. "I'm taking the ledgers," she said. "The household ledgers?" "All of them. 9 years of accounts, grain contracts, trade agreements, mine yields, border patrol rotations, and the tax reconciliation files. I wrote them. I organized them. They're in my handwriting because no one else in this keep bothered to learn double-entry bookkeeping. Without those ledgers, Garrick won't know how much grain is stored, how much is owed to Goldenmere, or when the next shipment of iron is due." Berta stared at her. Then a slow, magnificent grin spread across the cook's weathered face. "You brilliant girl. Also, I'm taking the spice cabinet. The saffron alone is worth more than Lenora's horse. I purchased every ounce of it with my personal dowry funds. It's mine." Berta laughed. It was a low, dangerous laugh, the laugh of a woman who had survived 3 husbands and trusted none of them. What else? Aveline considered. "My mother's silver, my books. The winter medicine stores, I compounded them myself, so they're mine, and the cheese." "The cheese?" "The aged Firewolf cheese in the cold cellar. 42 wheels. I spent 3 years perfecting that recipe. Garrick doesn't even like cheese. He won't miss it until his new Luna tries to host a feast and realizes there's nothing in the larder but salted pork and regret." By evening, Aveline had packed 14 crates. She had done it quietly, efficiently, with the help of Berta and 2 kitchen maids who had volunteered without being asked, because it turned out that the household staff had opinions about Garrick's romantic decisions, and none of those opinions were favorable. The problem was leaving. Ashenmore Keep sat on a rocky plateau surrounded by pine forest on 3 sides and a sheer cliff drop on the 4th. The main gate was guarded. The postern gate was locked at sundown, and Garrick, for all his emotional failures, was not stupid. He would expect her to try to leave, and he would have instructed the guards to prevent it, not out of love, but because a discarded Luna wandering the northern roads was politically inconvenient. Aveline was standing at the kitchen window, considering her options, when she heard the noise. It came from the old granary behind the keep, a low, rumbling sound, half growl and half whimper. She knew that sound. She had heard it before, on border patrols, in the deep forests. It was the sound of a wolf. Not a shifter wolf, not a pack wolf, but a real wolf, a wild one. She should not have gone to investigate. She had 14 crates to move, a keep to escape, and a rapidly narrowing window of time before Garrick decided to summon her for whatever humiliating conversation he was surely planning. But the sound was wrong. It was pain-wrong, and Aveline had never been able to walk away from pain-wrong sounds, which was how she had ended up married to Garrick in the first place, because 9 years ago she had heard a wounded soldier howling in the rain and had gone to help him, and the wounded soldier had turned out to be the most handsome alpha she had ever seen, and he had looked at her like she was the only warm thing in a cold world, and she had loved him. She had loved him so much. She went to the granary. The wolf was silver, not gray, not pale. Silver, like moonlight, had been hammered into fur. It was enormous, easily twice the size of a natural wolf, with eyes that shone the pale blue of glacier ice. It was also very clearly injured. Its left hind leg was caught in an old iron trap, one of the cruel, spring-loaded things that Garrick's father had set decades ago, and no one had bothered to remove. The wolf snarled when it saw her. "I know," Aveline said. "I wouldn't trust me either. Everything in this keep has terrible judgment." She approached slowly. She had done this before, not with wolves this large, but with injured animals in the forest. The key was to make yourself boring, unthreatening, the kind of creature that clearly did not have the ambition to be a predator. "I'm going to look at that trap," she said, keeping her voice level. "And then I'm going to open it, and then you're going to not bite my hand off because I need my hands. I have 14 crates of cheese and spices to load onto a cart tonight, and it's really hard to drive a cart with stumps." The wolf watched her. Its ice blue eyes tracked her every movement with an intelligence that was not entirely animal. Aveline knelt beside the trap. It was rusted, but still brutally functional. The iron jaws had bitten deep enough to draw blood, but not deep enough to break bone. She studied the mechanism. She knew these traps. She had spent her first year as Luna systematically disarming them across Blackmere territory because she thought they were barbaric, and Garrick had let her because it had not seemed important enough to argue about. "This is going to hurt," she told the wolf. "I'm sorry." She pressed the release lever with both hands. The jaws opened. The wolf yelped, a sound that was far too dignified to be called a yelp, but there was no other word for it, and yanked its leg free. Then it just sat there, looking at her. "You're welcome," Aveline said. "Now please go away. I have a dramatic escape to execute, and I don't have time for a wildlife encounter." The wolf did not go away. It licked its injured paw, then stood, testing its weight. It limped, but it walked. It looked at Aveline with those impossible glacier eyes, and then it looked at the keep, and then it looked back at Aveline. Then it lay down across the granary doorway. "You're not helping." It yawned. Its teeth were very large. "Fine, guard the door. That's useful. I'm going to go be publicly humiliated now, and then I'm going to steal my own cheese and leave. If anyone asks, you didn't see me." She left the wolf in the granary. She had larger problems. The summons came at dusk. A servant, not one of the loyal kitchen staff, but one of Garrick's personal attendants, a thin man named Harwick, who had the personality of a damp sock, knocked on Aveline's chamber door and informed her that the Alpha required her presence in the Great Hall. "Required," Aveline repeated. "His word, my lady." Of course it was. She dressed carefully. Not in the plain wool she usually wore for kitchen work, but in the one fine gown she owned, deep midnight blue with silver thread at the cuffs, the gown she had sewn herself for last winter's solstice feast. She braided her dark auburn hair and pinned it with her mother's silver combs. She did not do this for Garrick. She did it for herself, because she understood that in the next hour her dignity was going to be tested. And dignity was easier to maintain when you felt like you looked like someone who deserved it. The Great Hall of Ashenmore Keep was a massive stone room with a vaulted ceiling supported by pillars carved to look like wolves standing on their hind legs. Garrick sat in the Alpha's chair on the raised dais at the far end, and Lenora sat beside him in a smaller chair that had been hastily draped with white silk. That chair had been Aveline's. She had sat in it for 9 years. She walked the length of the hall. Every step echoed. The pack was assembled, warriors, elders, household staff. They watched her with expressions ranging from sympathy to discomfort to the specific blank-faced neutrality of people who knew something was wrong, but were not personally willing to do anything about it. "Aveline," Garrick said, and he had the decency to look uncomfortable, though whether that was actual guilt or just the social inconvenience of explaining to a room full of people why he had replaced a perfectly functional wife, she could not tell. "Please sit." There was no chair for her. "Where?" she asked. The silence was surgical. Garrick's beta, a barrel-shaped man named Griff, who had the emotional intelligence of a fence post but at least the honesty of one, shifted his weight and muttered something that might have been a curse. "A chair," Garrick snapped at a servant. "Bring a chair." They brought a chair, a small wooden one, the kind used by scribes, and they set it below the dais, not on the platform. Below it. Below Garrick. Below Lenora. Aveline looked at the chair. She looked at Garrick. She did not sit. "You have something to say to me," she said. "Say it standing." A low male voice came from the Western delegation near the rear doors. "Then standing is the only honest position left in this hall." Aveline turned. 12 riders in silver-edged cloaks stood beneath the carved wolf pillars, road dust still whitening their boots. At their center was a black-haired man in a closed black coat, taller than Garrick and unnervingly still. He wore no crown and no pack crest, only a narrow silver clasp shaped like a wolf fang. He had arrived at noon as a Western road envoy, and until that moment he had said nothing. Garrick's expression hardened. "This is a private pack matter." You summoned the full household, 2 visiting lords and foreign witnesses, the stranger replied. His pale eyes moved once to the scribe's stool below the dais, then returned to Aveline. It stopped being private when you removed your Luna's chair. He did not step in front of her. He did not offer to speak for her. He merely stayed where she could see him, a silent witness whose attention held no pity. For the first time that evening, Aveline felt observed without feeling diminished. Garrick's jaw worked. She knew that look. It was the look he got when reality was not performing according to his expectations. The bond between Lenora and me is a true mate bond, he said. It cannot be denied. Pack law recognizes. I know what Pack law recognizes, Garrick. I rewrote half of it. That a true mate bond supersedes a ceremonial marriage. When confirmed by the Pack Elder Council, witnessed by 3 neutral alphas, and recorded in the Sovereignty Ledger, which I also maintain, none of which has happened. Garrick's eyes narrowed. It will happen. Then let it happen properly. But you didn't call me here to discuss procedure, did you? Lenora leaned forward. She had changed into a white gown embroidered with gold, probably from the keep's own textile stores, which Aveline had stocked herself. And she had the expression of someone who was trying very hard to appear gracious, and was mostly just appearing nervous. Lady Ashwood, Lenora said, I want you to know that I never intended to. To what? Take my husband? Take my title? Take my chair? I know this must be painful. What's painful is that you're wearing a gown made from fabric I imported from the Southern weavers at a rate of 12 silver marks per bolt, and you've cut the hem crooked. Lenora looked down at her hem. It was in fact crooked. Aveline turned back to Garrick. What are your terms? You'll be given quarters in the East Tower. The tower with the leaking roof. And you'll retain the courtesy title of Lady Ashwood. How generous, a leaking tower and a fake name. And you'll participate in the formal transition ceremony, where you'll transfer the Luna Seal to Lenora in front of the Pack. The Luna Seal. It was a medallion of dark iron, stamped with the Blackmere wolf, worn by every Luna of the Pack for generations. Aveline had worn it for 9 years. She reached up and touched it now, feeling the cool metal against her collarbone. You want me to hand my seal to this girl, in public, and smile. I want you to do it with grace, Aveline. You've always had grace. Grace, she repeated. You want me to have grace. She looked at him, at this man she had loved since she was 22, this man whose nightmares she had soothed, whose wounds she had stitched, whose household she had held together with nothing but stubbornness and double-entry bookkeeping. She looked at the silver in his eyes and remembered when those eyes had looked at her like she was the only thing worth seeing. All right, she said. When is the ceremony? 3 days. 3 days. Fine. She paused. But Garrick? Yes. You should know that I've taken the household ledgers. The room shifted. Garrick's expression changed. All of them, she continued. Grain stores, trade contracts, mine yields, tax reconciliations, patrol rotations, every record of how this keep functions. I wrote them. They're mine. Aveline. Also the spice cabinet and the aged Firewolf cheese. 42 wheels. I'd say I'm sorry, but I spent 3 years perfecting that recipe while you were off deciding which wars to start, so I'm not even a little bit sorry. Griff, the beta, made a choking sound that might have been a laugh. He turned it into a cough. You can't take the ledgers, Garrick said, standing. Those are Pack property. They're written in my personal cipher. Nobody else can read them, which means they're either my property or they're very expensive kindling. Your choice. Lenora looked between them with the expression of someone who had just realized that the fairy tale she had walked into had footnotes she had not read. I'll give you the ledger cipher key, Aveline said. When I am released from this marriage with my full dowry restored, my mother's silver returned, and a formal letter of good standing signed by you and witnessed by 3 neutral alphas. Until then, I hope Lenora is good at arithmetic, because winter tax season starts in 6 weeks, and the northern mines will want their yield reports. She turned and walked out of the great hall. Behind her, she heard Garrick say, "Aveline," and she did not stop. She did not stop until she reached the granary, where the silver wolf was still lying across the doorway, and then she sat down on an overturned bucket, and she pressed her hands over her face, and she breathed. The wolf lifted its head and watched her. "Don't look at me like that," she said, her voice cracking exactly once. "I'm fine." The wolf stood. It limped over to her on its injured paw and pressed its enormous silver head against her knee. Its fur was surprisingly warm. It smelled like pine sap and cold stone, and something else, something sharp and electric, like the air before a lightning strike. She put her hand on the wolf's head. She did not cry. But she sat there for a long time with her hand on a wild animal's silver fur, and she breathed, and she planned. 3 days, Garrick had said. She would be gone in one. The escape happened at the third bell past midnight. Berta had arranged a cart. Not one of the fine ones from the keep's carriage house, but a sturdy farm cart from the village below, driven by Berta's nephew Tam, a lanky 19-year-old with perpetually startled hair and the useful quality of asking no questions about anything ever. "Where are we going?" Tam asked. "South," Aveline said. "How far south?" "Far enough that Garrick Blackmere's name is a boring fact and not a present danger." "That's very far south." "Then I hope this horse is well rested." They loaded the crates in silence. 14 crates of ledgers, spices, medicine, cheese, silver, and books. Everything Aveline owned, everything she had earned. Her entire life in Ashenmore. Keep reduced to what could fit on a farm cart. The silver wolf appeared as they were finishing. It materialized from the tree line like a patch of moonlight that had decided to go for a walk, and it sat at the edge of the clearing and watched them with those glacier blue eyes. "No," Aveline said. The wolf tilted its head. "I am not adopting a wild wolf. I have enough problems." The wolf stood up and walked to the cart and lay down underneath it. "That's not, you can't just..." Tam looked at the wolf, looked at Aveline. "It seems decided, my lady." "It's a wild animal." "It seems like a decided wild animal." They left. The postern gate had been locked, as Aveline had expected, but Berta had one final gift, the key. She had taken it from Harwick's belt while he was eating supper, because Berta had the hands of a pickpocket and the moral flexibility of a woman who had watched her mistress be humiliated in front of 50 people. "Go," Berta said, pressing the key into Aveline's hand. "Don't stop until you're past the river crossing, and don't come back for that man, not if he begs on both knees." "Berta, don't you dare cry, not for him. You cry when you're somewhere warm and safe and eating your own cheese, and not a moment before." Aveline hugged her. Berta was not a hugger. She tolerated the embrace the way she tolerated overcooked meat, with stiff disapproval and a faint tremor that suggested hidden emotion, but she hugged Aveline back. "Go," she said again. They went. The cart rattled down the mountain road in the dark. Tam drove. Aveline sat beside him, wrapped in her cloak, the Luna seal still around her neck. She had considered leaving it. She had held it in her hand and looked at it, and thought about setting it on Garrick's pillow with a note that said something cutting and memorable. But she did not leave it, not because she wanted to keep it, but because she had earned it, and she was done leaving behind things she had earned. The silver wolf trotted alongside the cart. Its limp was improving. In the moonlight, its fur shone like liquid metal, and its glacier eyes caught every shadow, every movement, every rustle in the dark pines. It moved with the particular alertness of an animal that was not following, it was escorting. They traveled south for 3 days. On the first day, they crossed the Blackmere border into unclaimed territory, the vast, lawless stretch of pine forests and rocky valleys between the northern wolf packs and the Silver Reaches. Tam drove the cart with the grim determination of a young man who had been raised by Berta and therefore feared nothing in the known world except his aunt's displeasure. Aveline navigated from memory because she had spent years studying the maps in Ashenmore Keep's library while Garrick had been too busy being alpha to notice that his wife had memorized every road, river, and border crossing in the Northern Territories. On the second day, they ran into bandits. There were 5 of them. They emerged from the trees at a narrow point in the road where the pines pressed close and the cart could not turn around. They were the usual sort, rough, unwashed, armed with short swords, and the misplaced confidence of men who had never met a woman who could lift a grain sack over her head with one arm. Aveline could lift a grain sack over her head with one arm. "Off the cart," the lead bandit said. He was missing 2 teeth and most of his charm. "Leave the cargo." Aveline looked at him. She looked at the cart full of her possessions. She looked at the wheel of Firewolf cheese that was sitting on top of the nearest crate, aged to perfection, worth approximately 40 silver marks at market. "No," she said. The bandit blinked. "That wasn't a request." "I know. My answer is still no." The silver wolf, which had been trotting ahead of the cart, came back. It walked out of the trees with the silent, deliberate gait of a predator that had been politely waiting for an excuse. It was enormous in the daylight, shoulder height to a man's chest, teeth like ivory daggers, glacier eyes fixed on the lead bandit with the focused intensity of a creature that had already done the math and decided that 5 against 1 was unfair, but only for the 5. The bandits looked at the wolf.